Welcome back to the Escape Podcast. This is Josh, and today I'm going to be talking about Predator Badlands.
I didn't think you survived. You're hunting something that can't be killed.
So, I got to see this movie over the weekend, and I wanted just to talk a little bit about what I thought. I remember, I think it was in April when the teaser trailer dropped. I didn't know anything about this movie coming out. I was kind of surprised, and I thought maybe from the thumbnail that this might be a fan-made trailer. So as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, okay, the quality looks pretty good. But I noticed when they show the Predator, he has a new look, which I wasn't exactly crazy about, but I'll get to that more later. But essentially what this movie is about is Deck is a smaller predator. Usually they're about 7 feet tall. He's smaller. He's not as good at fighting, so he's considered the outcast. And he is going to this planet to hunt the most dangerous animal there, the Kalik, I believe it's called, in hopes that he can bring the head of it back to his tribe and then regain his rightful place in their hierarchy. So I initially, wasn't all that excited about the movie. I didn't like the look of the Predator and the new thing. I didn't care for like the laser swords. I thought that was too Star Warsy. After a while, I started to come around to it a little bit more. Not the look so much, but I was starting to get past the weapons a little bit. I'm used to the Predators having more of a just bladed objects. They have the plasma cannon rifle on their shoulder, but other than that, most of their weapons are blade weapons, blunt instruments. So this got to be to the point, where I wasn't interested, but then I kind of became really interested, and it was kind of the movie I was waiting for the most. So I saw this. My wife took pity on me and went with me because I didn't have anyone else that wanted to see it with me. So we saw it, and all in all, I was very entertained, but still there was something that wasn't quite right. It's like it was fun and it was entertaining, but it was so weird to think this is now the direction of the Predator movies. It's definitely got that Disney Marvel influence, so 20th Century Fox is now owned by Disney. So it's now, I think, 20th Century Studios, and it definitely has that flavor to it. And that's, to me, not necessarily a good thing. There's pros and cons, of course, all over. Like, so for instance, I know in the comic book world, the Predators have been given the name Yautja, which to my knowledge has not ever officially been adapted into like the movies until this one. I think this is the very first one to do that. And I like that they're taking some of their mythos that they created in the comic books and bringing it into this. I understand, you want to do something different, and I was excited about it. It's like every movie so far, it's been basically the Predators coming to Earth and trying to hunt the most dangerous people there, whether that be military, gangs, police, whatever. But, and they're supposed to be the most lethal, dangerous aliens, out there. But of course, they're eventually defeated by one or two people. I understand the people are the heroes, so you got to have that. But I thought it was a good idea. Like, let's do something different. And I liked the idea that the Predator was now the Schwarzenegger role. He was the Dutch of this character. We're seeing him have to survive. It's like, kind of like what I said for Jurassic World. The first two Jurassic Parks were all about them trying to get the dinosaur zoo set up. And it's like, how many times can we see this happen? That's why I was kind of happy with at least the direction they went with Jurassic World. Of the zoo is up, the park is ready, people are here, and it's kind of the same thing here. We can't keep seeing them come to Earth and hunt. It's been done. It's been done over and over. It's time to move on. I appreciate that. The problem I had is you're kind of losing some of the mystique of the predators. You're losing some of the fear factor. We never knew exactly what they were thinking. And I like that. That kind of kept them scarier. Besides just their look, you never knew exactly what they were thinking. It's like when, from the movie Predators from 2010, when Adrian Brody, he encounters one of the predator that's been like tied up, and he thinks to himself, if I release him, he'll help me get to Earth. But when he does so, the predator immediately like grabs him by the neck. And you're thinking like, oh man, is he going to help him? Is he going to kill him? What's he going to do? But I like that. You never know what they're thinking. And it's kind of that mystery, I think, is what kept them so interesting. At least for me, it's kind of like Boba Fett or Yoda, the Breen from Star Trek. You don't know a lot about them. And I think that makes them a lot more interesting. It's like that type of thing where you want to learn more, at least I do. But in another way, it's best that they don't. I think they really need to be careful how much they show and us about the predator. I think they're walking a fine line here. It's kind of like I think we knew a lot about, like, for the comics and stuff, what they were like, but to have that officially be the canon now, because essentially the movies can take a new approach, but just kind of cherry pick what they want from the comic books. So I think they really need to be careful. Some things are better left unsaid. But again, to talk about the Disney Marvel influence, it's like kind of like, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's a bit watered down, and I think they're trying too hard to appeal to multiple types of audiences. And this is nothing to, and it's going to sound really sexist, but the girl character, Elle Fanning, Thea, I think her name is. She just is a motor mouth and just talks nonstop. When she's not doing that, she's actually all right. But like initially when we meet her, she's just spewing out, talking like crazy, and it's just a little annoying. And then of course we also have the cute animal creature. It's like he's like the Gizmo or Grogu of this film, and I remember thinking like, oh, that's just to sell toys. That's totally, I could see this character as a stuffed animal. My wife even said after the movie, I said, what'd you think about it? And she said, well, it was pretty good. I'm just glad Elle Fanning was there. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, it made it a lot easier for me. And I really think that's what they were going for. Mission accomplished to them. But I think, I'm not sure if it's Trachtenberg's fault or if this is like the Disney mandate, if like they pushed him to make it more Marvel-y. Personally, I'm kind of been tired of Marvel. I know I said it back in our first episode. To me, Marvel does this thing where they do a big action scene, then like a little funny scene, then a little heartfelt moment, then another big action scene, another funny moment, heartfelt moment, and just wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over until the movie ends. And then they do the same thing for the next movie. And to me, that's just getting old. I guess it has worked for a while. So, it's kind of like Steve Urkel, with Family Matters. They just kept pushing him over and over again. I don't know. To me, I applaud them for trying something new and for having it be from the Predator's point of view. But I think some of the other stuff is just a little too much. It's just a little too hitting me over the head. Now, they did develop a Yautja language. I think it was done by the same person who came up with the Na'vi language for Avatar. I think that's pretty cool. I'm glad, though, that they had the Predator speaking his language and it's subtitled. And then Elle Fanning, who's an android, is able to translate. So she's kind of doing the Han Solo Chewbacca thing where, so you know what he's saying because obviously you can read it, but then she's speaking back in English. Frankly, I know this is a very lazy American thing, but I'm happy that there wasn't like 2 people or more speaking where I had to read subtitles. I was able to keep up with it with that. I think it was a good idea that they, had him speaking his language, but her speaking English to kind of like split the difference. Speaking to the Klingon connection, the Klingons changed a lot throughout the Star Trek series, not just with their looks, but their behavior. If you look at them in the original series and stuff, they're not really about the honor and the duty and all that. Even in the early movies, the original series movies, it wasn't really till Worf in Star Trek The Next Generation where they established that. And people didn't seem to mind that. Or if they did, they got over it. I don't know. I've never heard too many people complain about how much they changed the Klingons over the years. So maybe I'm kind of in the minority here with, kind of being a little bothered. It's weird. It's like one side of me kind of likes the idea of getting to know them more, but then the other part of me thinks, you're taking it maybe a little too far. Like, I think maybe there's a line they shouldn't have crossed. I don't know. Speaking to the look of the Predator, so what was it, 21 or 22 when Dan Trachtenberg did the Prey movie? It was all practical, maybe some CGI to enhance like blood and stuff. I don't know, but like all in all, it was a mechanical prosthetic mask. And I liked that. However, the thing I didn't like is he redesigned the Predator face for that, which I wasn't really thrilled with, but I appreciate that it was a live action thing. Now in this one, the Predator's face is a lot more in keeping with the classic Predator. However, it still is a more humanoid look. Like the head isn't as big. He just doesn't look quite as good, but I appreciate that it's a little more in keeping with the classic look. However, the face was done through like motion capture CGI. I guess he said he wanted to have the Predator be more, you are able to understand what he's thinking through his facial expressions. I get that. I totally understand why, but at the same time, I just can't help but think it just doesn't look as good. There were some scenes in this where they showed his face and I was like, wow, this looks really bad. This looks like something they should have been like early stages, it just didn't look like good. And yet, the newer Planet of the Apes movies, which are a few years old now, they're especially that orangutan, Maurice, I thought, a lot of those looked really good. And I just didn't feel like they did quite as good of a job here with this. I know it's different studios, or different effects houses, but, still I was like, you guys need to step up your game a little bit. So I really wish they would have done a practical mask. Another thing I thought was kind of silly was like the legs fighting independently. So there's a scene where Thea her legs are, she's basically got no legs throughout the whole movie. There's a part where her legs are walking and fighting for her and doing all this stuff. And it was a little excessive. It was a little silly. They did kind of the trope where the villain is not who you thought it was. That's kind of getting old now. I think they could have done a little better with that. They just did a lot of mixing, here. There's a lot of like, they did something light and fluffy, and then they did something kind of like more harsh and violent. So, and back and forth. It's just really uneven feeling. It doesn't seem like they know exactly what kind of movie they want to be. And I think the problem is they want to appeal to too many types of people. I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing your audience and just sticking with it. These movies, let's just face it, they're made for guys mostly, especially teenage 20, 30 somethings. These are typically, the action sci-fi movie. They're violent and all that stuff. And that's who they kind of appeal to. And I know that sounds really bad. It's not politically correct to say, but of course it's not to say women can't enjoy them, but I just feel like they're trying too hard to make it like fluffy and cute for girls so that, the guy can take his girlfriend or wife to the movie and she's entertained, which is exactly what happened with my wife. She went with me and then she said she enjoyed it more because of those light moments. And I'm glad she enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm not saying it's a terrible movie. It's just not a great movie. This is not a movie that I feel like, man, I got to see this again and again and again, and I'm going to buy it. I definitely don't think this is the best Predator movie. I think outside of the first movie, I think Predators from 2010 is probably my next favorite. I'm kind of interested in what they're going to do next, but I really just hope they will figure out a way, hopefully, to do a practical mask that can emote the way they want it to, so that we have the best of both worlds here. Because it's kind of like, the Jurassic Park movies and the Ghostbusters movies. You have the old movies and they have a certain feel to them, and then they started doing the newer stuff and it just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't have that tone that we want. It's just very different. And, you can say the same thing about Star Wars and Star Trek too. That's how this came across. It's just, there's familiar things, familiar locations, whatever, that it is reminiscent of the original thing, but it just doesn't have that same kind of heart. It's like, this is kind of a weird analogy. It's like you have a restaurant over here that has your favorite dish and the food's really good, but it's a little further out for you and it's kind of expensive. But then you have this other restaurant, it's closer to home. It's more affordable, but the food's just not as good. Like certain things are just worth the time and money and effort and distance for, like, sometimes it's just worth it to go a little further and try a little harder to get that better meal. And in this case, the effects. I know that sounds really shallow of me to put so much emphasis on the effects, but I think that would really help. I can't imagine I'm the only one who struggled with the look of the Predator. And again, and the other thing is just it's a little too cutesy. It's a little too lighthearted and fluffy. There's nothing wrong with those kinds of movies. Sometimes that works. Like some of those, like The Wedding Singer, Adam Sandler, it's kind of a half and half. It's kind of a romantic comedy, but then it's kind of got, Adam Sandler doing his typical rants and all this stuff to kind of make it work for both parties. Sometimes those movies can work. Maybe that's not the best example, but sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. For me, this did not work, but I applaud them for still trying something new. I just think they went too far with it. I think, it seems like most people like this movie. It's I think doing pretty well right now. So as I look right now, it has a 85 critic and 95% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. So I know it's doing pretty well with most people. I guess I'm kind of in the minority here, and that's fine. I set alone a lot on this kind of stuff, but I don't know. To me, it just didn't have the right feel to it. It's not what I was hoping for. I get the vibe too. There was a lot of woman power, girl power going on in this film. So you had Elle Fanning, two of her actually. You had the whole thing with the big creature is female, the little psychic creature is female. His mother is coming at the end. So I think they're really also pushing a lot of women run the show kind of thing. And I'm not saying men run the show. It's just that's kind of getting old too. This whole woke garbage of, a man comes in and a woman's got to show him up. It's just getting old too. So I will say this, it's not as bad as some of the other films that have done that. But they still, I think, put it up a little too much. So I don't know. Hopefully the sequel, which I'm assuming they're going to do, will be better. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. That's just my thought. I guess right now, if I was to give it a grade, I would say like a C+ is about the best I can give it. But that being said, why don't you write us and let us know what you think? You can check us out on our link tree. You'll find all the links to all the podcast directories, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can email us there. Let us know what you think. Share us, please. We'd appreciate it, and all that kind of business. So God bless you, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
I said, what does God need with a starship?
Headcanon it to be... dang it. Alexa, stop. Okay.